I'm Ian McEwan. I come from London, and I'm a British novelist.
Ian, thanks for being here. You are one of the most celebrated and critically acclaimed writers of our time. You are the author of 19 novels and 2 short story collections, and today you are here to talk about your latest novel, What We Can Know. Can we talk about the title, What We Can Know? As the book goes on, you start thinking, can we really know anything? What does the title mean to you?
It runs on several levels. What we can know about the past, what we can know about the future, and what we can know about each other. And how difficult it is sometimes to break through even to the person closest to you. So it's a dialogue with history, with futurology, the future of love, the future of history. In some senses, it's, I guess, a science fiction novel without the science. I'm interested in all those things that science fiction don't look into, like what's the future of universities, humanities, intellectual life, artistic life, but also love, betrayal, changing circumstances through time, and getting the present and past and future all into some kind of dialogue with each other.
How did you choose 2119, 94 years from now, as the amount of time in the future you wanted to set this story?
I started with 400 years, and then a very good friend of mine who's one of my first readers, on his first reading of an early draft, said, I think 400 years is too long. You're writing in the same language, you know, and although you've got all kinds of explanations of why language hasn't changed much, it would be so much more alive if it was a future that we could almost reach out and touch. And I used to, as a young writer, not take notes very easily from other readers early on. And I've come round to the view that you know a good note the moment you hear it. It's a matter of recognition. As soon as he said it, I felt relief. Yes, it has to be 100 years would do it fine.
What was it like to imagine the future that you describe in this book? And what sort of research did you do to imagine this fate?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I used to do a lot of research for my novels, and now I've reached the age, I'm 77, I feel that my head is so stuffed with stuff that I try to treat it like a garden, and I prefer to go down those garden paths into my own mind and my own memories as research. I didn't research a thing for this.
Your character Tom and his pursuit of this lost poem makes me think, what is the importance of art when the world is burning?
Well, I've passed the point of thinking that climate change fiction can warn people because it's already happening. We're in it. We don't need to be warned. So the function of art, one element of that is to render pleasure to us, aesthetic pleasure. And another is to open a discussion, and I'm talking particularly of literature here, of trying to understand where we are, what we are, who we are, what it's like to be a man or woman in a city, in all the conditions of modern life, to reflect back on us, what we are. And that's really why I thought that having someone writing about us from the future, who half envies us, half despises us for all our mistakes, would be another way of sort of carrying on that discussion that I think literature is always having with itself and with its readers. You know, what's going on now? Where are we heading? Where have we just been? Is human nature changing, or are we about to interfere with human nature by bioforming? So yeah, I'd put it there. But pleasure has to be a strong element in this.
The concept of a lost poem that has achieved this myth-like quality, so much so that a scholar wants to track it down 100 years later, is, for any lover of the written word, so romantic. Was there a real poem that inspired this?
There absolutely was. It was written, it was published about 4 years ago. It's by John Fuller, an English poet, now in his 80s. And I should just explain that this is called a corona. It's got nothing to do with the pandemic. It is basically Renaissance or Rococo form. It consists of 15 sonnets. The last line of each sonnet has to be the first line of the next. The 15th sonnet is the corona, the crown. And this is the real tough one, it consists of the first line of all the preceding 14 sonnets, and it has to make really good sense. And a corona traditionally is spoken or addresses one particular person, a loved one perhaps. Fuller's poem was published, and I read it, and I was astonished by its beauty, how relaxed it was with all these rules you hardly notice. I didn't guess for a minute when I read this poem that I was going to write a novel about this poem, but it bit hard into my thoughts and feelings, and 2 years later I was fully engaged with just such a poem that gets lost. Maybe I think a lost poem, like a poem as good as this that got lost, would be a terrible tragedy, as it were, and make us value it all the more. Along the way, I wrote just the odd few lines of this imaginary poem, and I'm not a poet. And when I gave it to one of my close readers, early readers, he loved the novel, he said, but he said, do not quote from this poem. You are not a poet. So I thought, well, that's such a good note. It's an act of recognition, a good note. And it would put the reader in the same position as all of us, including myself. We do not know what's in this poem.
I love it. If you knew you were going to be teleported to a dystopian future where access to books is limited, but you know you can bring one book with you,
Right.
what book are you bringing?
And I'm not allowed a 40 Sept encyclopedia, I guess. I probably would take James Joyce's Ulysses, because I'm always dipping into it with such pleasure. The beautiful rhythm of the prose, the strange division of its sections, the wonderful soliloquy of Molly Bloom at the end of it, and the wit and warmth of the novel. I know quite a few fellow writers who treat it almost as a Bible. I see that, quite a few people I know just keep it on their desk. It's just always there. You don't have to read it end to end. So I think that would be a colossal comfort to me to have that. Joyce, I think, was revolutionary and rather like Wordsworth. He changed our minds about what the novel could do. He brought us into some understanding of how we might represent the flow of consciousness. And also he was revolutionary too, because he could write about children so well, as well as Dickens, as well as Jane Austen, if not better.
This is your 19th novel. Has your writing process changed? Does it get easier? Harder?
I was one of those writers who sweated over every sentence when I started out. I was very unsure of myself. I felt I was a slow learner in the art of fiction. And slowly, I got, after about 20 years, slowly getting faster and slightly more at ease with myself, I got to the point where I've been in for the last maybe 15 or 20 years. I think I'm in my 50th year of writing, so that just about makes sense. now I have a much stronger sense once an idea has started to form, or more typically, once two ideas have started to merge. Like this poem impressed me, but I was also following closely on the internet some organizations that want to send information into the future in case civilizations collapse. So how to make soap, how to make glass, how to make a 3-crop rotation, what is a germ theory of disease, and so on. And that notion of the future and this poem came together. So just to describe one process, and as soon as that was there, it began to flow. And then it moved from one gear into another, so that I think after about 3 months of doing this, I knew I had my material and I felt fully in command of it, in a way that my 25-year-old self would have been very envious of. So not everything gets worse as you get older.
Well, speaking of those envious 25-year-olds, do you have a piece of advice that you give to aspiring writers?
Yes, it is. You must recapture the privileges that we all had when we were in our 20s, and that is, and this is one of the great luxuries of civilization, it is the luxury of solitude. And you cannot have solitude if you are online. So my advice is you must have at least 3, preferably 5 hours a day where there is no screen, no outside world pressing in on you, and open up your own mind to your own examination. And it's very, very fruitful.
Wow. Thank you so much for being here, Ian. It was such a pleasure to chat.
Well,
What We Can Know is available everywhere books are sold. For Late Show Book Club updates, follow our Instagram @Colbert Late Show.